Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to the Tread the Path podcast, the podcast from Kupi Productions, where we explore the inspiring journeys of Muslim professionals across diverse industries. I'm your host, Salman Hassan, and each week we sit down with the remarkable individuals who are making their mark in their chosen fields. We highlight their successes and their challenges in their journey, as well as examining corporate accountability within the industry, offering any actionable advice on career advancement and ethical navigation to those who want to tread that path. As a reminder to our listeners, you can find the show notes, resources, and ways to connect with our guest speakers on the Tread the Path archive in kofiproductions.com. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Nabila Uddin, attorney in personal injury law. She started her career in architecture, but then pivoted into law after a year. So Nabila, assalamu alaikum. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Walaikum salam. It's my honor to be here. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for taking the initiative to create a platform like this because it's very much needed in the community. And I love how you're connecting different Muslims from different states, from different fields, but it's the same message. And so I've been watching some of the snippets that you've been putting out, and so mashallah, like kudos to you for starting this beautiful initiative, and inshallah, it's only filled with barakah.
Inshallah, inshallah. I mean, thank you so much for your kind words. I hope it's not only a benefit for you, but for everyone else that's watching as well, and all the other guest speakers that'll be on the show, inshallah. So appreciate that. So let's dive in. Please, if you don't mind, give us or give the listeners a brief overview of what you do in your current role as an attorney.
Perfect. So, just like you were saying, Salman, my name is Nabila, and I practice personal injury law. Currently, in my role, I practice in New York. I've handled a number of cases all over the country at my previous firm, but primarily I focus on New Jersey and New York. I don't mean to bore anyone with the details, but in New York and New Jersey, we are a no-fault state. So the laws are a little different compared to other states. Most states are at-fault states. So a lot of my day-to-day is really trying to help my clients understand the process of what happens when you're involved in an accident in the state of New York or New Jersey, how important their health is at that critical time because they're vulnerable. They're coming to you at a time of vulnerability, right? And so my job
Right.
as an attorney, as an advisor, as an advocate, is to make sure my client knows exactly what to expect. I warn them of what could happen if X, Y, and Z is not done. And then on top of that, I'm also building a team. I currently have an amazing team at an amazing firm, and I'm currently building my team up to teach them everything that I know, that I've learned, because I know that when I train or when I give a part of myself or a part of what I've learned, I'm giving that back into the community and giving back to society. And so for me,
Absolutely.
it comes from a place of ethics, which really comes from my dean. And from there, long story short, I'm an attorney, but there's a bigger purpose, bigger mission behind it because I'm really trying to change somebody's life. And by doing that, you have to be a better leader, a better attorney, a better family member, a better friend. So it's all interconnected, if that makes sense. So that's kind of what I do.
Love it. I love it. That's a great introduction. And I think you've answered a bit of like my next question to you, which is what initially drew you to the world of law and personal injury. I know you mentioned about, wanting to care for people at the most vulnerable moments. But if you could go a little bit deeper into what was so attractive about the world of law and serving people in that capacity, please share a little bit more.
Of course. So I think people who step into these fields, like the legal field or something grand, they've always known from childhood that they were not like everybody else. So I always
Mm,
felt that. I
yeah.
always felt like I felt crazy because no one else was like me. And actually, I'm the only lawyer in my family, I believe. Yeah, in my family and my friend group. Before I went to law school, obviously I met amazing lawyers and colleagues in law school. But prior to that, I was the only one who pursued this field. And so growing up, I had a strong interest in investigative journalism. Scared my parents because I was so passionate about it. I was like 12, 13. I'm like, I'm going to be this, I'm going to be that. I'm going to expose these people. Yeah, I'm going to speak the truth. Scare them. It scared them, because, back home, when things like that happen, it's inevitable, what happens. So
Yes.
they
Yeah.
were just terrified. Long story short, I went into a high school where we had to take career courses instead of language courses. They put me in architecture. I could not get out of it. I really tried very hard to get out of it, but I ended up really loving it. And then I was like, oh, okay, maybe I could do architecture. There's only select few schools that do architecture. I'll make money quick. I'll graduate. It's gonna be great. And so I went to architecture school. Really did enjoy it. It was a very challenging time, but I've learned how to master a lot of skills over the years in school. But then in my last year of college, I was like, I don't want to be an architect for the rest of my life. I'm missing this part of me, this advocacy part of me that I was not utilizing in architecture school. The thing with architecture is it's very similar to law in the sense that you have a guideline, you have a rule, you have a
Yeah.
guidebook, which is zoning, whatever it may be, just like the law. And on top of that, you are creating a space or you're helping your client navigate through the legal nuances,
Yeah.
right? But you have
Yeah.
creativity to move past that. So it's a very similar. The way I see it, it's like the backbone is very similar, but the what was really missing it was the advocacy part for me. Like what I really loved about
Yeah.
teacher school was I had to present my project, explain why I did this, why I did that, and I love that part of it. But I wasn't impacting people. It was just theory to me. And so I was like, I cannot live like this. Like this is not who I am. This is a hobby.
Hmm.
This is one of my passions, but this is not the bigger passion of mine. And I knew that. And so that's when I decided to pursue or looking into law school. I really thought at the time, oh, it's over. Because, like a lot of people believe that you need prerequisite courses in order to even take LSATs or even get into law school. But then I quickly realized you don't. I'm like, wow, maybe I can really do this. So I kept it a secret. I just like, did my thing, started looking, started applying. And then I decided, you know what, I'm going to take a year gap, work in the field, architecture for a little bit while I study for the LSATs, get ready for law school. And that's what I did. And that's what ended up helping me go to law school. And that's how I got into law school. I went to CUNY School of Law in Long Island City, Queens. So right in my backyard. I went to school with phenomenal, phenomenal colleagues. And like I made some of my best friends in law school because we're all going with the same purpose, same driven, same drive.
Yeah.
And so they're like my sisters. Like these people are like we've never met until we went to law school and they became my sisters. And so that's my journey of how and why I decided to go in the legal field. And I chose it because I naturally am somebody who is an advocate at heart. Like I cannot stand injustice. Like maybe there's something in me that just cannot accept it. So I have to do something about it. It's just naturally ingrained in me. And this is how actually my mom raised us. She was very much like what is right, what is wrong, how to give people their rights. And this actually runs in my family. Looking back, my grandfather was like this. Back in the day, how people they didn't really have court systems.
Right.
They had a community where they trusted elders to take care of their family business, or family matters. And so
Sure. Yeah.
come to my grandfather, he literally had a portion of the house just for that. So people would come and congregate at my mom's house, meeting with my grandfather, and he would decide and help them figure out what is the best thing in that situation. And to this day, people remember my family through my grandfather's actions, and they
Wow.
have so much respect. Like, I remember visiting London, and they found out we came, and they were so happy. They wanted to host us because they were so happy of just one little conversation my grandfather had with their uncles or their dads over something so small, but it changed their life because my grandfather was such a pillar of justice. So I come from that line.
Mashallah. No, that's wonderful, and it makes sense a little. With the way you explain a little bit of your family history, how it just makes sense for you to be in that same path of justice, right? And advocacy and standing up for people who don't necessarily have the voice or the means to be able to stand up for themselves, right? Especially in the court of law. And at a time like this where we need, injustice is so rampant, right? We need more people and more minds such as yours to be able to speak the truth and advocate for justice and for what's right. But I want to also talk about your experiences in law school, or a little bit of the challenges that you faced during your time through law school, right? Mashallah, you said that you're very uh, inclined to join the world of law, and your heart sought out for that, right? And so it just came naturally to you, and and mashallah, you enjoyed it. But if you could share some of the challenges that you faced for to our viewers, let us know what some of the sort of the challenges are.
Okay, so I'm gonna keep it real. So when I first started law school, so mind you, I'm coming from a background where I never like I loved to read when I was a child. We only had books. That's all we did. I don't know how, these kids have iPads and phones and stuff because we never had that growing up. We always had books, me, my sister. That's all we did. So I enjoyed reading. But then architecture school, you're not really reading. You're just drawing. Maybe you're reading the article, but you're literally drawing, you're designing. And so fast forward to law school, now I have to like 100, 200 pages to read, and
Just
I haven't read
reading.
so
Yeah,
long. So what I had to do is quickly learn how to like read quickly and comprehend it in like a really short amount of time. Okay, so that was one challenge that I faced, but I quickly overcame it because you're reading literally every day. The second thing was obviously me being a visibly Muslim woman at law school. So the good thing about my law school is I was not the only one. I can count them on my fingers of how many other hijabi women there were like myself. And mind you, I started law school the semester before COVID happened and everything was shut down. So
wow.
I really had one semester in person and then a little bit of the second semester, because I think it was March where they cut it off. And all of a sudden, we were in contrast class and they were saying, "Oh, we may not have to come in next week." And then, and no one, everyone was like, "What?" And then that happened. And then we were literally shut down and we were completely remote until my last semester in law school when we finally came back in person. And that was my last semester I completed in person and graduated in person. So
Mashallah.
this is the experience that I'm talking about is just a very short period of time because the rest of it, most of it was remote. So in my first semester, one of the challenges that I really faced was me, a hijabi Muslim woman, coming into this field with, people who got a degree in undergrad related to the law. So
Mm,
I came in with something completely unrelated. So sometimes I would feel a lot of imposter syndrome, thinking, wow, like maybe I should have done, maybe political science, even though, by the way, political science has nothing to do with the law. It's just a very common undergraduate degree for
you're
the
right.
legal field, but it has nothing to do with the law. Or at least it doesn't really prepare you for law school. But at the time, that's how I believed. That's what I actually believed. So there was always this imposter syndrome. Like I'm visibly Muslim. I'm not a white person. I don't have this privilege. And I don't have the experience that a lot of my colleagues had, or supposedly what I thought. But what I didn't realize, or what I realized at the end was actually I'm coming in with a number of life skill experiences that maybe my other colleagues did not have, which prepared me ultimately for law school and for my career. So those are kind of the challenges that I had was how do I assert myself in a male dominated field, right? Because even architecture was a male dominated field, but this is also a male dominated field. And you have to kind of advocate for yourself more. Whereas architecture school, you're just presenting your project and everything is based upon your design. So you don't really have to say much. Your
Right.
project's for itself. However, in law school, you have to talk, you have to advocate for yourself. You have to, like there's so many times where I had colleagues in my classroom that were so like not mindful of the people around them that
Hmm.
the class is for 2 hours. You're going on about this theory, but it has nothing to do with what we're talking about in class. So it was a lot of, me just, trying to exert myself or advocate for myself in spaces where I may not have I'm not that typical, lawyer look, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Uh, or what, people believe that to be. So it's kind of constantly, making space for myself and making sure I knew and I believe that I deserve to be in that room, especially since, this law school is in Queens where I was born and raised. Because a lot of my classmates were actually not from Queens. They were not from New York. They came from out of state. And so I had to constantly tell myself I belong here. Just like what we're seeing with Zahra Mamdani is like we belong in this state. We were born and raised here. This is our home. This is our state. Side note, I'm very excited. This is the first time that I'm very hopeful in a future for New York because
Likewise. Yep.
it's it's like, yeah, long story short, those are kind of the challenges that I face.
I love it, and I think you also touched upon something that reminded me of the last podcast episode. The guest speaker mentioned about belonging or acting as if you belong in whatever space you're in, right? And absolutely we must embody that wherever we go, because that not only shows a confidence, but the people around you can see that, like, you know what you're doing, and you're here to, you're here for business, you're here to represent and do your work, right? And hijabis especially do this really well. I know that for a fact, because not only because a lot of my family members are hijabis, but those who I work with are also hijabis, and they embody that advice. Act as if you belong so well. And you also mentioned that the world of law is a male-dominated industry, which is true. But so many individuals in history um, that are well-known advocates are women, and so I just found that like a very thought-provoking, head-scratching even. Like, some of the most prominent figures in history are women who have advocated for so many rights and changes to the laws that we see in effect today. And so, we can dive into it later on in discussion. But I just thought when you mentioned that, it was just an interesting thought to have. So with that said, we're going to pivot over a little bit into what we love to explore and talk about in the Tread of Path, which is the intersection of our faith, Islam, with our professional lives, and also how that impacts our personal life as well. So my question to you, Nabila, is how has faith influenced your career choices and your professional approach in regards to law?
Great question. I would say that my dean was the primary reason why I'm here today and why I made the decisions that I made, because Islam is justice. When you look into Islam and the laws, it is all about justice. The Quran
100%.
speaks about justice and hudud, and what happens in this case when your rights are usurped. What do you do? What are your rights? You know, and
Yeah.
so this is, I think, true justice is Islam. And of course, as somebody who's a human being on this earth, I'm going to try to find a form of that justice on this earth. And so, I don't think that the law is perfect. I think that there's a lot of change that needs to be made. But what I can do in my power is use what I have to really change people's lives. So, and the way I do that is when I'm talking to my clients or when I'm talking to my team members, I'm talking to them from the heart. I'm trying to do the best I can with the ability and the mind and the skills that I have. So it can look very different for different people, different scenarios. One example is, let's say, I'll give you a quick example. In the personal injury field, a lot of the times insurance companies will try to lowball my clients, especially for serious injuries. And so what they'll do is they'll offer a really horrible, horrible initial offer even before demand is sent. Because first of all, they know the case is worth a lot more than that. They'll try to have the client sign a release. Sometimes they do in a very sneaky way. Well, they'll send a link. The client has no idea what they clicked on, and it's signed. And then I can't do anything about it because it's signed. So what I have to do oftentimes is when I first get a client, new client, I have to explain these things like, this is how it works. Do not talk to anybody. I'm here to advocate for you. This is what's going to happen in the first stage, second stage, third stage. This is the time frame that you can expect. And some clients don't know this is their first time involved in something like this. So I have to, show compassion and mercy and also justice in that setting, because that's how you embody, the dean and your principles. It's very, it's all, it's interchange. It's the same for me.
Yeah.
My career is Islam, and Islam is my career, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I have the most deepest respect from Muslim lawyers and Muslim attorneys, because, well, attorneys without Islam, or, who are not Muslim, they're not driven by faith, or they're not driven, a lot of them, they're not driven by morals. They're driven by whatever the law says, or if they're, greedy or immoral, then they have other agendas. But Muslim lawyers, on the other hand, they're driven by the deen, by the faith. And, well, we're not going to talk about Sharia law here, but, like, if the United States law was completely derived from Islam, I believe we won't have any problems. You know what I mean? Like, and so obviously, Muslim lawyers and attorneys are bound by the law, right? By the rule of law. But in how they apply that, and the case by case, they also use the deen to drive the decision making as well, right? So I have deep respect for Muslim lawyers and attorneys for being able to integrate Islam into the world of law as well. It's not an easy thing to do, especially here in the United States, where laws are being bent to left and right by those who are in power, right? Unfortunately. So, well, I mean, we'll get into the morals and ethics part of the discussion later on, but just wanted to point that out as well because as a Muslim and hijabi as well, I'm sure you face challenges constantly, right, on a daily basis, professionally speaking, and also personally speaking as well. But Muslim attorneys, especially those who are female and hijabi, they're- the complexities are just one on top of another, right? And so that was going to be my next question: is what misconceptions about Muslim have you heard of in the professional setting, and then you've addressed as well in your time as an attorney?
Great question. I don't know where to start.
Wow. Okay. But
So
yeah,
I'll let me. So there's a couple of things, right? I think a lot of people unfortunately have this misconception that for some reason, when you see a hijabi woman, she's incompetent. That's what they believe. A lot of people believe that. And unfortunately,
that's wild.
a,
That's wild.
yeah, I would say a lot of Muslims actually still believe that. And I think it comes from self-hatred and
Mhm.
insecurity because, we are a traumatized community. Like post 9/11,
Yeah.
even before, I mean, I was a child at the time, but I'm sure like older folks really did experience the horrible effects of 9/11 on our community,
Absolutely.
Islamophobic
Absolutely.
attacks, and even, that led to injuries and deaths, right? So I think our country, and our community has been plagued by this. So what happens in response is you're not proud of your deen. You're embarrassed of it. So when
Yeah.
you see somebody, when you're living in that state of not proud of your identity, not knowing what your deen is, you're embarrassed of your deen. And then when you see a Muslim woman in hijab, she's embodying, or at least she's trying to embody the principles of the deen, you see her as a threat or you see her as incompetent. Like, unfortunately, this is why I am such a huge advocate in our community, especially the men going to therapy and doing this inner work, because this is how we become better as a community. I personally
Absolutely.
do this inner work every day on a daily basis. And so, and I'm around other Muslim lawyers, male and female, who also do the same, who are Muslim. And that's why we're changing the narrative. We're some of the best in the industry because we do this inner work, because Islam tells us to do this, to do
Yeah.
the hisab of our own self before the actual time comes. So this is Islam. So I think that was one of my challenges is sometimes in our community, they'll see a Muslim hijabi and you have amazing people like on flip end, right? They want to
Yeah.
work with you. They trust you. Like there are non-Muslims or not hijabis who see me and want to work with me because they trust me. They know that I have something greater that I believe in. And so that gives people trust, right? But on the flip side, it may also make people feel like I'm not incompetent. So that's also a challenge that that I face, unfortunately. Um, and yeah, so that's a huge challenge, and it's constantly trying to, I don't have to change people's perspective. That's not my responsibility. But me having to live this reality is something that I think a lot of women or a lot of people don't talk about. That happens
Yeah.
in our community on the daily, because Salman, I've experienced it. That's why I'm talking about it, because I've been in these spaces, Muslim spaces, where I was made to feel that I was incompetent, you know? And so
Yeah.
when you're in these spaces, what is going to help you navigate, understand who you are is doing this inner work, realizing that your trust in Allah has to be greater than your trust in your employers and in the people around you, because you have to have a greater mission to do that. And that's my advice actually for people who are in the legal field or any field. You have to know your mission, you have to know your purpose. And some people are supposed to be in your lives for a season, and some people are supposed to be in your lives forever. And you have to realize when that time is up. One of my favorite quotes is by Ali Banat, rahimullah. He passed away. I don't know if you know who he is. He used to run a charity in Australia. So this was a man who had everything in the world. He was diagnosed with cancer and he changed his whole life around, and he donated everything. And I remember watching one of the interviews with him, or that was conducted by somebody else, and he was asked, like, how did you get here? Like, what happened? And he said, when you have a good intention, and I'm just paraphrasing, when
Yeah.
you have a
Sure.
good intention or you have a goal, Allah's going to send you people to help you. So you just have to keep going. And so I face so many challenges as my identity, as somebody like me who looks like me. And it's hard. Like, this past week, I was experiencing imposter syndrome, to be quite honest, because I'm the only Muslim hijabi in my law firm. They're not making me feel like that, but it's just like, it's just something internal. So I
You
have to
feel it.
work
You
on
feel
that.
it.
Exactly. So it's like constantly challenging yourself, taking accountability of yourself. How can you be better? How can you challenge these negative thoughts, which are obviously from shaitan? How do you
Yeah.
safeguard yourself from this? And the
Right.
best way, I think, is staying on your Quran, being around like-minded people, and trusting Allah, because all of it is tawakkul. Like, you cannot get to A to Z without Allah. Even
Of
from A to
course.
B, you cannot. You cannot.
Right.
So just having that confidence in yourself and confidence in your Rabb is going to take you places.
I love that. Those are great advices, not only for newcomers, but also even seasoned veterans. Every now and then need a reminder that, hey, mashallah, you're well accomplished. But again, Allah is the holder of outcomes, right? He's the one who truly determines what happens and what doesn't. What should be, what shouldn't. And I love also that you pointed out that trust is the key ingredient to making anything work, right? And without trust in Allah, without trust in people, without trusting your attorneys and lawyers, you can't get ahead in life. You can't move on. You can't move on. Be part of your everyday life. You know, uh, you know, whether that's personally speaking or professionally speaking, that has to be ingrained into that. So these are great advices and would love to continue that. But let's quickly pivot over to your role in industry before we dive into like the ethics part of the discussion. Broadly speaking, walk us through a typical day or a week in your position, however much you can share. Just paint that picture for the audience, if you will.
Okay. Great question. So day to day is different. Usually the goal is making sure my cases are managed properly, making sure clients are being contacted, making sure that I'm settling cases, that good offers are on the table, settling for full policy, that kind of stuff. So a lot of it, unfortunately, you'll find where the insurance company is lowballing my client. So I have to so what you're looking at is the value of the case, value of the injuries, value of X, Y, and Z, and then you're negotiating with the adjuster. And so a lot of my conversation is making sure this demand is sent out, or making sure my client understands the next process. My client understands the importance of this treatment, or how they're feeling. I always check in my clients to see how they're feeling, because the priority for me is their health at this time. Because that's how personal injury cases work, is you want to prioritize your client's health and make sure you know exactly which injuries they're experiencing, because then you can argue that in the demand. So my job is to make sure all of that looks good, so that I'm
Yeah,
in a good position to argue for my client and advocate for my client if I have to. Sometimes, the insurance companies, they don't give it, they match my demand, and sometimes they lowball me. So that's where it gets complicated.
yeah,
So what I'll do is, get on the phone with the adjuster, and explain to them the value of this case, X, Y, and Z. Sometimes, you can tell from the first conversation if they're willing to work with you or not. Okay. So this is all about negotiation. I'm just speaking about negotiations.
sure, sure, yeah, yeah,
Um, and so sometimes what I'll see is the adjusters meeting me at the number, like they're working with me. So I'm like, okay, this is worth going back and forth, right?
yeah.
But there are some adjusters, they're either newbies or they really think they can take advantage of a client. They won't even meet me at the reasonable demand. They won't even meet me at that. So then I
Oh
have to
wow.
explain to them, do you understand that X, Y, and Z happened? My client experienced X, Y. Do you know what that is worth if I were to take this to court? Do you understand that? So sometimes I have to be more, because with negotiations, with people's skills, it's mirroring. You're mirroring the other person, the other tone. And
Yeah,
that's kind of what it is, in the legal field, in any field, right? So, and then sometimes what they'll do is I give it some time. I tell them, send me the release for this amount. I can probably get this closed out. And if not, then I'm prepared to file on this. So, because it's like, when you're working with somebody and they're meeting you, you can work with them. But if somebody is down here and this is what the value is, they're taking advantage of the client. And so in that situation, I'm giving it some time. And, every attorney does things differently, but I
yeah,
like to give it some time, maybe a few days. And sometimes they'll send me the release for what I'm asking for, you know?
yeah,
They understand. They understand, like, what they do is they're also checking you out to see what kind of person are you? What kind of advocate are you? So
yeah,
it's very like it's such a balance. One part of my week or day, and then other parts are obviously training my team as to what to look out for, how to identify issues from the beginning. Because I like to be very proactive and efficient with my cases. So I want to make sure I'm training my team on how to catch those things. Because my whole agenda, my whole goal in my position is to make sure my clients are satisfied because it's an amana. And I actually told this to some of my colleagues. Like we believe in amana. So when a
Mm.
client is coming to me, at their most vulnerable time, they're placing this amana on me. I have an amana to make sure I'm doing the best 100% in my power. What that translates into is me training my team efficiently, making sure that they understand that this is the value of a case or this is how I expect things to get done. I have to be clear, I have to communicate that very clearly. And you're working with different personalities, right? So you have
Yeah.
to learn to see what are somebody's strengths, what are somebody's weaknesses, and how to make them better, how to make yourself better, and then how to because it's really just going to affect the quality of the law firm, the quality of the attorney, the quality of the work that I put out. And it's going to affect the quality of my client's life. I've had clients where they've told me, you've changed my life. You've changed my life, you know? So this is the kind of impact that I want to have. This is just on a small scale. There's
Yeah.
so many other things I want to do, but this is what I can do in my power as an attorney at this firm at this stage in my life.
I love that. Also, and you mentioned amana. That's for those who don't understand what amana is. It's basically the trust or the right upon someone, right, and the capacity that you're in. And I love that you mentioned it because not only you have an amana on the clients that you serve and the employees that you're training or that you lead, but also amana to yourself and to the company that you represent, right? Because if you're not doing the best, even your best shot every single day, you're doing a disservice to yourself and to the company or brand that you represent, right?
Exactly.
And this is also, I guess a reminder to myself, like if you're an individual contributor, let's say you don't have anyone that reports to you, or you're just a single person in the team, you still have an amana, right, to yourself and to the company that you work in, right? It's not a one-way street, is what I'm trying to say, right? You have to have that communication, that the level of again, trust building, right, to be able to be effective at what you do. Which brings me to the next question is about the most rewarding aspect of your work. I know you mentioned a lot of things like, yeah, having that impact in people's lives and the fact that you enjoy what you're doing. But if there's one thing that you would say that stands out as the most rewarding, what is that one rewarding aspect of your work?
Honestly, sometimes it's clients, you know, who have never dealt with an attorney before, and this is their first time ever speaking to me.
Mm.
And you're kind of explaining, or I'm kind of explaining to them what to expect. And a lot of times, us attorneys, we do have to be therapists at times.
Yeah.
So
I was just thinking about that, but yes.
it comes with the job, sometimes, but
Yeah.
you also, as an attorney, learn when to stop, there's a balance. I've had moments where clients are so grateful. They're so grateful that I'm helping them in this stage. And they're like, I trust you. I am so happy to be working with you. So those things are really rewarding to hear, as well as having team members who are so grateful to have you as their leader, as their mentor, right? Because you're impacting people, you're impacting real life people. And
Yeah.
then obviously, when I'm calling the client to give them the good news that, look, I got your authority and I settled the case for X, Y, and Z. Beyond, like, the initial offer was a very low offer, but I went back and I made sure we got you what you deserve. And giving that call to the client and them just being so grateful, so happy, like those calls are so rewarding. Or when the client comes up to pick up the check, and they're just so elated because now they have compensation for their pain and suffering,
Mm.
like,
Yeah.
it's like real life. You can change somebody's life in months. I remember one of my clients, he was a guy out in North Carolina. By the way, like I said earlier, I'm very comfortable handling cases from other states. So I was handling this one case. It was a six-figure case. And the client was, I explained to him what to expect. I looked at his medical records. They were not looking great. I said, most likely, from my experience, what I've seen is you're going to experience long-term effects if you don't get this addressed now. Give him the whole spiel, explain to him how it works.
Yeah.
And he said, I think I'm feeling great. I'm feeling great. And his daughter called me, actually. His daughter called me a few weeks later. She was like, I just wanted to let you know my dad has a high pain tolerance level. So I know he's in pain, but he just puts it off as if he isn't.
Oh, wow.
And so she's like, can you please talk to him? I'm like, look, I will definitely talk to him and see what I can do. That I cannot force anybody to do anything that they don't want to do. So I give him a call and I explain to him I understand. And I understood what she was saying because I also have a high pain tolerance level. So I knew exactly what she was talking about. So I explained to him, and especially, the weeks later, I realized the pain was getting worse because when I hear nerve damage and tightness, that's not
Yeah.
a good thing. That's not a good sign. So he was telling me he can't move his body, and I'm like, okay, this is the right time to have this conversation. And he ended up going back to the doctor, and the doctor actually recommended X, Y, and Z because he needed it. And then after he did the procedures, he came back and he said, I am so grateful, Miss Nabila, that you had this conversation with me because I feel so much better. I'm no longer waking up with pain. And so at that stage, I was like, he's like, I'm feeling great. I'm like, okay, if you're feeling great, give us some time because I don't like to close out a case prematurely. Because if you do that, if you close out a case, you cannot, once you settle a case, you can't go back.
Yeah.
So I always try to have like several conversations with my clients until they give me the final okay. So that's when I went and had prepared the demand, and we got the full policy. I settled the case for 6 figures. And I called him
Nice.
to give him the good news, and he was elated. And he's a Southern dude, right? So
Yeah.
older man. So he was like, I'm tickled pink.
That's such a
I loved
southern
it.
thing
I
to
loved
say.
that he said that, and he was so grateful because he was saying that, my grandson found your information online and he said, Papa, you should go here. Like this is all online. He's never met me. Like it's, you know what I'm saying? So it's like,
Yeah.
and I feel like when you have good intentions, like you get people with that same intention. Like you start to meet people like you.
Yeah.
And so I believe like I was the right person that he needed as an attorney, as an advocate at that time because I think a lot of people in my situation may not have advocated in that way. So
Yeah.
that's what I mean by advocacy with heart is that's what I'm bringing in to my field is how would I like to be treated? How would I want my father to be treated? How would I want my sister to be treated? And that's the kind of level of service that I aim to provide to not only my clients, my colleagues and everyone around me.
Yeah. No, alhamdulillah, it's so refreshing and reassuring to know that, there are attorneys and people like yourself who have that in heart and mind, right? They truly want to serve, right? And have the best interests in mind for the public and for the clients that they serve. However, we know that there's also people on the flip side that don't believe that or they're driven by different agendas, right? So let's dive into some of the controversial stuff that you've seen, right? And then let's talk about what ethical dilemmas that are common in your field. So if you could name or point out maybe a one or two most common dilemmas. So what are they that you've seen personally?
Wow, great question. Because this is something that I talk about with my colleagues,
Yeah.
and I always surround myself with high quality people. So I don't even in my personal life, if you're not adding value to my life, you don't deserve to be in my life. You have to put some value
Yeah.
because what happens is you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with. You're the average. So it's just like Allah says in the Quran and even Hadith, what company are you keeping around you? You
Yeah.
I'm very selective of who I keep around me. This is something that I've learned over the years. And people think you're like so arrogant or so this, but the truth is like I have an akhirah to prepare for. I have no time to risk it. And sometimes, but anyways, I can get into that. But
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. 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 I
but
get it.
the question was the ethics, right? The things that I've
Yeah.
seen.
Yeah.
I'm keeping this very real with you, Salman. Some attorneys are, we have this like stereotype that we're ambulance chasers, right? I'm sure you've heard of that
Mm,
where a car accident happens and an attorney is all of a sudden like they're calling you. You have no idea how they found your number. You have no idea how they knew that you got into accident, but they want you to hire them. And I've seen this in New York where other clinics or sorry, other law firms will send like someone from their law firm to poach somebody else's client in the clinic. So this is an unethical practice that happens all the time in New York. I'm sure in other states as well. Another thing is, some of these attorneys, some of these law firms are chasing money. Okay. So
yeah.
they're not so the client feels neglected and they're doing X, Y, and Z that they don't have to do. And it's like it's like you're harming somebody. You're deceiving somebody, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And on top of that, when people like that exist as legal professionals, it makes the rest of us look really bad.
Yeah.
So these are the kind of some of the ethical issues that I've been seeing, I've been facing. I know like law firms where they're in a lawsuit because of unethical practices. So one thing as a young attorney, especially as a young Muslim attorney, you have to always value your license. You have to make sure you safeguard it,
Yeah.
because we work so hard for our degrees and we're, outstanding members of society, most of us. So you want to make sure you're preserving your license and protecting yourself at all times. So whenever if I ever come in contact with ethics that don't align with me, I separate myself from that. I do not want to be involved. I do not want to be a witness to that, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like you'll hear conversations, you'll see things, sometimes it's the same group of people you might know. So it's a very small world, but it's always, advocating for yourself. It all goes back to advocating for yourself and knowing what your values and principles are and which ones you would never ever compromise on. So for me, it's ethics, of course. Like I
Yeah.
want to make a difference in my clients' lives and I want to make sure that my clients are valued and honored no matter what.
No, that's I love the advice, right? And your approach to, what would you do if you saw something like that, right? In the career world or professional careers of different kinds, the general advice is if you see something unethical, speak up to your manager and report it. Or, in extreme cases, just, you can either protest publicly and then quit your job and go somewhere else to work, right? But I'm curious how that works in the legal field, right? Like you can't just get up and leave, right? Because you have clients to serve. A, and then B. I'm not a legal profession by any means, but like I'm sure there must be processes in terms of like if you witness something unethical, there are certain rules and set of actions and steps you have to take to make sure that it's addressed and that whatever decision you make, there are plans in place for that. So could you walk us through what's the right thing to do if you see something like you said, for example, someone poaching another client from another law firm, right? Like what would you do in that case?
So in a case like that, that's a very difficult thing to address, right?
Yeah,
Because it's done so often where the client doesn't even know what happened, So it's like, what can you do? How can you prove that this happened?
you're right.
You know?
Because in the world of law, everything's about proof, right? And like, you have to have yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're right. So in a case like that, speak with the client. Like I would definitely speak with the client, and I understand what happened, right?
Right.
And if you can't prove it, you can't prove it. And that's why having early conversation with clients about what to expect, that you should not be answering calls from other places. I'm your attorney. If you do, let me know so I can have that conversation with them. That's also
Yeah.
very because this has also all the time, Salman, where uh, these companies find out your client is injured and the client is telling you, oh, I'm not answering calls anymore because I'm getting all these like different phone numbers calling me asking about a lawyer, but how do they even know I'm in an accident? So it's like their information, subhanallah, somehow is leaked,
Yeah.
and all these people are calling them. So you have to like a great lawyer is going to have that conversation with their client, explain to them that this is very normal. Unfortunately, just telling you how it works. But I can address because I can only speak from experience. So I've had
Sure. Yeah.
situations
Yeah.
I've had to address unethical issues. So the way to do it is you address it with management, you address it with whoever you can, and you make sure that you're documenting everything, right? And if at that stage, and everyone does everything differently, right? Me
Yeah.
personally, if it violates my line of ethics and principles, I'm not gonna stay. Okay. And what happens to clients is, yes, unfortunately, clients suffer, but it's like I'm also doing myself a disservice if I'm continuing to accept this type of unethical behavior at a place. Because then it's like there's an imbalance there. Like I'm an
Right.
advocate, but I'm also allowing this. I know this is what's happening in the background. Am I okay with that? And this is where tawakkul comes in. This
Yeah.
is where you have to trust Allah that your old clients are going to be taken. And some clients actually want to leave with you. They will actually want to leave with you. You're not
Wow.
poaching them,
Right.
but
Right. It's their
a client
choice.
a client can hire and fire any attorney at any point. So some clients will actually leave with you. They want to leave with you, because you've had that relationship with them, right? And other
Yeah.
clients, obviously, like I've had a case before where my lawyer was changed. It definitely did impact my case. So, but also it's like you cannot stay in a place where you're not living your authentic self because then that's stopping you from doing what you need to do to accomplish your mission and you would be doing a disservice to yourself if you were to do that, you know? So
Yeah.
it's like a balance. It depends on this situation. You got to understand what your limits are, what your boundaries are. And if somebody crosses them, ethically, personally, you have to make that decision for yourself. And that's all, it's all related to tawakkul and what you believe,
Hmm. Yeah.
you know?
Speaking of, and then that's great. And speaking of belief, right? There's the rule of law, and then there's also like, the law laid by Allah Himself, right? The ultimate rule of law. And so I guess my next question to you is like in terms of corporate accountability, and accountability in general, right? What's your advice in terms of like advocating for speaking up for the truth and speaking up for accountability, whether that's on the professional, even personal level, when you see, unethical actions that are also not aligned with our Islamic principles, right? Because, yes, we're lawyer by day or engineer by day and whatnot, but you don't turn off being Muslim, right? Right? That you're always bound by, the Islamic principles that Allah has commanded us to follow. When we see that being broken, what would you do in that sense? In that case, like what have you done at a professional or even personally?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you have any examples.
Of course. So I'm not gonna get too much into the details, but I'm a living example. I've done this before, where I've seen some unethical things happen, and I had to take action right there and there, right then and there. And first of all, every Muslim should know this: you harming another person, whether they're Muslim or not, or taking away somebody's right, is haram.
Yeah,
It's completely haram.
yeah,
So that's unethical to me. So even if a firm or a company does X, Y, and Z, but they're doing this, and I'm like one of the proponents of it, for me, I feel a type of way, you know?
yeah.
Feel a type of way.
I would
'Cause
too.
I've seen firms where they're hiring overseas, but they're paying less than an hour for the
Yes.
same work that somebody in the US would get paid so much more for.
Yeah.
So it's like, at what point do I turn a blind eye, and what do I do in that situation, right? And it really
Yeah.
goes, Salman, to what you believe and what your ethics are. Because we have the guideline is it's haram to take somebody's right away from them. It's haram to abuse people, clients, colleagues, whoever. That's the baseline. But
Yeah.
how that translates is something very personal. I think it's different from person to person. So for me, I've had to I mean, I can share an example. Actually, I'm going to share an example. So after the genocide started, at the time I was working at a firm in downtown Manhattan, and I was working on housing litigation. So I was
Sure.
representing tenants in housing court.
Yeah.
And genocide started, and there was, by the way, I was the only Muslim. I think I only saw one other hijabi in court at times, but other than that, I was the only one.
Oh, wow.
And this is me straight out of law school, still waiting for my bar results, and I was in Manhattan, like literally like right off Canal Street in the civil court. So I would be there like 3, 4 times a week,
Mhm.
representing tenants in housing court. And I remember the genocide started, happening, and genocide's been happening for many, many decades. But
Yes.
especially after the last 2 years, I remember, I don't remember if you know Wadia, the little
Yes,
boy
I
that
remember
was
him. Yes.
murdered by his landlord, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It was that week I remember just feeling so much emotions, so many emotions. I sent an email to my team, the team that saw me every day, that worked with me every day. And I said, I just find it so ironic that I'm waking up every single day helping fellow New Yorkers fight eviction, but these people, my people, are being bombed and taken away, like displaced of their homes.
Yeah.
And there's been not one word from you guys, not one word of support, not one word of, hey, what's going on? Can we support you? So I gave them a link on, what to, I didn't have to educate them, but I told them what's going on. I
Yeah.
gave them on resources, a place to donate if they want to get involved. And I gave them my personal cell, and I said, if you have any questions or would like to know more about the situation, I'm more than happy to help you understand what is happening. So I sent that email, no response. No response from the supervisors. I got some response from my colleagues, and they were really great. But
Nice.
at the time, I didn't feel great, so I took some leave.
Mhm.
And I remember at the time there was a Muslim women's retreat in Arizona. this is the story I'm about to tell you. You live in Arizona, right?
Correct. Yes.
So, it was my first time in Arizona. I actually love Arizona. I can't wait to come back or go back. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to go on this Muslim women retreat, but my friend was like, "No, we should go. We should go." I was like, "Okay, fine, let's go." And I remember one of the first things that we had to do was climb Camelback Mountain.
It's a hard mountain for a novice, or if you're not an expert in hiking or climbing mountains. But yes,
Yes, so because I was terrified of heights, and so when we got to the mountain, I thought it was gonna be a easy, quick, but then I got to the mountain, I'm like, "Oh my God." And one of the things that the leader of the retreat, she's a Muslim woman, she's also a lawyer, she was saying was, "Think about our people who are being massacred right now. Like, you can do this." So this whole test, this whole like exercise was a test of mental.
yeah,
It was a mental exercise, right? Because when we just couldn't keep going, or when we had to take a pause, we had to ask ourselves, was this a physical challenge that we were facing or a mental one? And for me, it was mental because I was terrified. And so my friend, she loves to she's like a go-getter, right? And she was ready to go up and down, and I'm just like, why did I even get myself in? I should have just stayed down. And I was getting really frustrated in the middle. And then she said something, and she's like, you can be scared, Nabila, but you have to keep going. You have to trust Allah. And then I don't know, like, that impacted me so much that I actually got up to the top. And then it was so beautiful because we looked down. There was like a Santa Claus guy up there giving out like candy canes, because this was in December. This happened in December.
sure, yeah, yeah.
And we saw like kids like literally up there with their parents. So, we're having a good time. We took photos, and I'm taking a moment to like uh, just understand like how I just climbed this mountain that I was so terrified of. And anyways, we're getting back down, right? We're walking back down, and I'm literally the last person out. All the women finished, and my best friend would not leave me. So she was also the second to last person because we went together. She
Nice.
could have left me, but she said, "I'm not gonna leave you. Like, we're gonna do this together." And so down, I was waiting. Me and my friend, we were waiting for who was waiting for us was the woman who organized the retreat. And I'm about to meet them, and I look down, and I find, and it looks like an interesting shape. So I pick it up, and it looks like the map of Palestine. And I have it. I have it. I looked at it.
No way.
I picked it up, and I brought it home with me. It's
Wow.
very hard to see.
I think, yeah, I kind of see it. Oh yes, kind of similar
It's the
to in
first.
the wall. Yes.
It's I'm gonna send you a photo of it, but it's literally, um,
Yeah.
you. And
What are
I
the
remember
odds?
I remember, like, I was like, and I showed it to them, and their jaws dropped. I'm like, "I just found it right here as I'm leaving this mountain." And then I went back, and I came back. It was only a weekend retreat. I took the rock back, and I sat there thinking, like, "This is a sign. I have to leave. I have to leave." Because this I feel don't feel right here. I do not feel right here. This violates who I am, my ethics. I cannot be here. It's no longer who I am. And I remember telling women in the retreat, it's all recorded actually, that I meant for something bigger, greater. And I know my current position is not offering me that. But I didn't know what it was. And
Yeah.
I just knew I could not be there. Like, there's something greater for me. Again, that goes back to tawakkul, right? And
Yeah.
trusting yourself. So I came back, and I gave them, I tried to stay for a few weeks, but I just couldn't because I kept thinking about this rock and about everything. And I gave them a month notice, and I said, I'm leaving by the end of the month. And I had no job lined up at the time. So I was leaving without even, I don't advise anyone to do that. I don't advise anyone to do that, but I had to trust Allah in that moment, because I was like, there's no way I found this rock at this time. There's no way that's a coincidence. I didn't believe that.
Mm-mm.
Um, and what happened is I ended up getting a job within 2 or 3 weeks of my resignation, subhanallah, in personal injury. And
Alhamdulillah.
that's how, my life changed. Is I was going after something in my heart that I knew, but I didn't know it was not concrete, but I knew that there was something greater.
Yeah.
And so what happens is when you're walking on this path of tawakkul, you're not going to see the steps ahead of you. They will be revealed to you as you continue to walk those steps. And this is something that my mentors have said to me consistently. Like, I have different mentors, and all of them say the same thing: is when you're walking, treading this path of tawakkul, you won't see the cards laying out there. You're gonna
Yeah.
have to keep taking that step, and it will be revealed to you. So that's my story. And I now I'm at a new firm because I'm looking to even grow even more, and I want to help more people, and especially me living in New York, me being from New York, from Queens, New York. I want to contribute to my society, my community, my home, my people.
Yeah.
You know, I just think the time that we're living in, it's the first time I'm hopeful in New York. So I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to hope and change, like real change.
It's very inspiring to say the least, and I have so many questions about your experiences at this retreat in Arizona and all that. But for the sake of time, we have to keep going. But if before we wrap things up, right? If you had one piece of advice to a young Muslim professional entering the legal field, right? What's that one advice? Mashallah, you had so many advices.
I
If
can't help
there's Yeah, if there's one that's super critical for them to understand, like in the legal field today, what's one thing that they should take away from you?
Can I say 2 things?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
So, I would say number 1, trust yourself, and number 2, be authentically yourself,
Mm,
because that is going to help you be in spaces that are meant for you. And that's how you know that you're supposed to be in that space, when you're truly yourself. And what that comes down to is trusting yourself, and how you trust yourself is trusting Allah. So it's all
absolutely.
intertwined. So once you do that, because this is something that I've learned to do over the years, right? Where I've learned to not master or kind of conquer imposter syndrome. I've learned to navigate different fields. I've learned what I am passionate about.
Yeah,
I found my purpose. And you have to do that as not just anyone in the legal field, but just anyone in general. You need to know what you're here for, and you need something greater to drive you. Like, I actually had a conversation with somebody yesterday who was, subhanallah, coincidentally, I had connected with her through somebody else, a friend of a friend,
okay.
and she was not sure if she wanted to go to law school. And when I got on the phone with her yesterday, turns out she was debating whether she wants to go to architecture school or law school. I'm like, what are the odds?
Well,
Like, what are the odds? And so I told her, and I'm telling everyone this, is you have to have a higher purpose, a higher mission that drives you,
yeah,
that drives you. Being a Muslim, there's so many different avenues to way to do it, you
yeah,
know? But you gotta find that thing that you have, that gift that you have. Like, for me, like, I can connect with people easily. And I'm just a strong, I will not stop until I get justice. You know what I'm saying? I'm that kind
yeah.
of person. So for me to not explore it, not give myself, not make myself accessible to my community or to people who need it, I'm doing a disservice to myself and to people. So you got to find your gift, trust yourself, and then you got to be authentically yourself, and this comes with some inner work, muhasabah of yourself. And Allah's going to connect you with the right people, right situations. You're going to be at the right place at the right time. And you will sit back and you're like, wow, there is no way I could have planned this. And all of it is tawakkul. Like, this is something, all of the
100%.
advice that I'm giving is an advice to myself first, because every day is different. And every day I have to tell myself these things. I'm not perfect, but I'm trying. And I was even telling this young woman yesterday, you will never be ready for the great things in life. You will never be prepared for it. They will come suddenly, and you got to take that chance.
Yeah.
And so, always believe in yourself, be authentic, and do good. Give people their rights, because there's barakah in doing that.
Mashallah, so many great advices said. I'm sure the listeners and whoever wants to connect with you would love to learn more about you. And so, on that note, how can the listeners or whoever wants to reach out to you? What's the best way to reach out to you, just for general advice or specific question about legal work or mentorship, if you're open
Oh,
to
yeah,
that?
I love that. I have great mentors, and I love to mentor other people. So I can drop my, Instagram. I actually just created it. It's called Attorney Nabila on Instagram. I talk about, I have a whole series that I'm planning. It's gonna inshallah be great. You can connect with me there, and then I can also drop my email. It's Nabila Uddin Esq at gmail.com. So these are 2 ways that you can get in contact with me, and I promise you I will try my 100% to help you out with whatever I can.
Inshallah, yes. Hopefully, not hopefully, people will definitely benefit from the advice and the mentorship that you provide. But since we want to make it a two-way street, right? How can we support you and the causes that you're a part of, right? What's the best way to support you?
I love this. So I'm looking to expand my clientele, and I want to reach the people who need to be reached. And so if referrals, obviously. If you're ever involved in something that you're not sure about, I'm more than happy to help. And the same way you can get in contact with me is my Instagram or my email, and I'm more than happy to help out and see if you have a viable case. You know, because when I'm what's happening is when you're young in your career, you're building your reputation and you're building your standard. So I'm in that process right now, and I know and I believe that as long as I am alive, inshallah, like Allah is going to support me, because as long as I'm supporting people and His cause, I want to get to as many people as possible, inshallah. So
Inshallah.
any support in that sense, it would be very much appreciated.
Inshallah, you'll get the support. That's a given. I firmly believe that. Before we wrap up, any last advice, final words that you like to share with the listeners that we haven't covered so far?
I think we've covered a lot, Salman. I think we covered a lot.
You did.
Do you have any questions for me, actually? Because I know you had some questions.
Well, okay. Actually, there is one question maybe the listeners can benefit from is, as a legal professional, as an attorney, I'm sure you come across a lot of tools and resources that, um, you know, either benefit you, in the long run, or just when you're searching, which law firm or which company to work at, right? And doing your background and your research. What tools or resources have helped you to find the right place to work at, or the right people to work with?
I'm very like spiritual, so I'm gonna tell you it depends. But a lot of it is it will come to you. That's what happened to me. Is a recruiter had reached out to me, you know,
Okay.
they reached out to me, and they said, I think you'd be excellent for the position. And, I got on the phone with them, explained to them X, Y, and Z, this is who I am, this is what I'm looking for. And they looked at my resume and they're like, Nabila, can I write you a cover letter explaining all of that? Because your resume is not showing everything that you just said. So he took the liberty to write me a cover letter that I went back, edited, fixed it up. And then he submitted my application like that. And I got an interview, like, I think within a week, you know? And then I got hired like immediately.
Nice.
So
Nice.
it's like, didn't I had the right intention and I was doing my part and connecting and obviously doing my research. When you're looking at firms, you look at them, you look at their history, blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff, right? So you do your due diligence, but a lot of it is like Allah will connect you if you have that
Mm,
faith. Because a lot of it, I realize the best things in my life have happened unplanned. Like I don't have to plan these things because I know
I
that
like that.
Allah is taking care of me, like, as long as I am serving Him and I am giving people their rights. I'm not in no way a perfect human being, but I try every day to be better, and I try to give people their rights. And so I like to surround myself with people like that because there's only barakah in that. So yeah.
No, that's great. And actually, that last thing you mentioned about surrounding the people that you like, there another question popped up, and I promise that's the last question for me. Is any specific people or mentor that you had in your life that really shaped who you are as a human being right now, and where you come to this point? Is there any particular mentor that really guided you in that sense?
Yeah, it's such a beautiful question, Salman, because I don't have one, I have several.
Many, yes,
Because what happens is you meet people at different stages of your life
that's
season.
true. That's true.
So I
Yeah.
can speak from a personal development as well as professional development. So my previous role, I had such an amazing, amazing colleague and supervisor. He taught me everything that I know in the PI field. And the reason why we connected so well is because our values were identical. Our personal values were identical.
Mm,
And the way he conducted himself in the professional field, I respected, I deeply admired. And so this is somebody that I trusted, and I went to him, like, and he gave me the liberty to do what I needed to get done for my cases, for my clients, and he trusted me. And that's how I personally thrive, is somebody who's a born leader. They always want to lead. They're never going to be followers. We always make something out of nothing.
yeah. Yeah.
And so that gave me so much confidence and so much support. I felt so much support from this individual from a professional level. As far as my personal, I've sought out many mentors. I still have a lot of mentors that I go to, and I'm so grateful for them giving me time. I have a great attorney friend that is helping me now. Whenever I have like questions, I want to get a different perspective. And you always want that in the legal field. You want to have different people you
Yeah.
can to,
Yeah.
so that like, because you're doing your due diligence. I'm
Yeah.
trusting myself, but I'm also doing more research to see if there's anything else I can do for my client and in the case. So I have that going for me as well. I am heavily invested in investing in myself.
That's
So
good.
I regularly see a life coach, and she's Muslim. I need to drop her information because I'm gonna drop. Am I allowed to drop her information?
If she's okay with it, then yeah.
Her name is Rashida Gay, Gaye. You can find her stuff on YouTube. This
Okay.
woman is a gift from Allah. And we talk about these things a lot where you can see from her stuff that she's passionate about the work she does, and she's changing people's lives. And so she had
Nice.
had an impact on who I am, and the challenges that I was able to work through. Because as you know, as the eldest daughter, you're kind of figuring things out for your parents, for your family, for your siblings. And
Yeah.
so I always need people I can go to. I need to
Yeah.
have that support system. And unfortunately, you have to create it. It's not there for you. You have to create it. Just like what you're doing, Sunman, is you're creating this online community space for Muslims to come together, and that's what I had to do for myself. And subhanAllah, and it's crazy, but like I said, she came up on my feed when I had no idea she existed. She came up on my feed one day, and I was like, I really like this woman. Let me reach out to her. And the rest is history. So it's like things will come to you, and you just have to believe. You just have to keep going.
Mashallah, I'm so glad I asked that question. Now, if anyone needs a life coach, go to Sister Rashida. I could definitely benefit from a life coach if I'm being honest. This
They
needs
help
some,
you so much because you know what it is? You have goals, you have things, they hold you accountable. And it's
yeah,
good. I think the most successful people in life have that.
yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, it was so much fun to talk with you, and enjoyed so much of the insights and your professional journey that you shared with us. So thank you so much for sharing that with me and the audience. And
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
and it'll definitely resonate with the inshallah all the listeners and those who will tune in. And so with much gratitude, jazakallah khair, and to our audience, inshallah, we'll see you next time. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu
Thank you for listening to the Tread a Path podcast. You can find all the resources our guests mentioned in the Tread a Path archive in our website, coffeeproductions.com, along with the links to connect with our guest speakers. If today's conversation inspired you or helped you in your own professional journey, we'd love to hear from you. So please leave us a review, share the episode with someone who might benefit, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. May your treaded path be blessed and full of wisdom. Assalamu alaikum.